Hi everyone, Jason here from spiritualbabies.net. You've joined us for the second part of the third chapter of Proverbs. Walking us through this chapter is Rabbi Joshua Neely. You can catch previous episodes on the playlist and many other programs on the channel. And don't forget to head over to Rabbi Neely's channel, where you're going to find 2 or 3 programs, videos done on different subjects every week. He's gonna, in the course of time, overlap my library, which is a good thing. So check out his stuff over there. It's brilliant. Thank you for coming back and joining us today, Rabbi.
Oh, this is a wonderful opportunity. I'm really enjoying going through Proverbs together.
We are going to start at 19. If I can figure out how to scroll. There we go. No mouse on this one. The Lord founded the earth by wisdom. He established the heavens by understanding. Now, I did take a sneak peek at the first 4 lines here, and it does seem to mirror, to some degree, although it's bullet pointed, creation. We've got founding the earth by wisdom is an interesting concept. And while I don't generally like to bring up Christian literature, when I was a kid, I was a big fan of the Narnia books.
Right, yes. Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe and all that, yes.
Right, and in one of them, Lucy goes to this kind of in-between worlds place, and Aslan speaks out, sings out planets into existence. And kind of reminded me, as I'm sure it was meant to, that the Torah is a sung event. And when I read this, it instantly kind of sprung to my mind about the creation being spoken. And so I'm wondering if there's a link here between the idea of wisdom and the idea of, how are we to read founded the earth by wisdom? Is it simply because God's really smart, therefore earth is really complicated? Or is there more to it?
No, not necessarily. And in fact, I think the usual way to read this in the Jewish tradition is to say, well, chokhmah, the word for wisdom that's used throughout the book of Proverbs, is usually a stand-in for the word Torah in the broadest sense. I mean, the word Torah itself, as a literal word, can mean instruction.
Right.
Indeed, it's been used that way. But Torah as the entity, if you will, the expression of God's wisdom that matches this world, which is how we sort of view Torah with a capital T, rather than Torah, the basic word that gets used in other circumstances as well. That entity Torah, which doesn't have a personality or will or anything like that, although it can be anthropomorphized in certain midrashim and proverbs, or parables rather, that existence Torah was something that God used to make the world. And so there was a very classic idea that God looked into the Torah to make the world. And what that means is that the Torah itself precedes creation, which is not just trying to tell us the idea that God had a set of blueprints that he used to make the world, but it's the idea that the Torah, that this embodiment of wisdom perfectly matches the world that we live in. That it's not that God created the world, stuck humans in it, and then everything is going all which way chaos, and then God gives us a guidebook to sort of kind of figure out what's going on. It's more like God gave us not the instruction manual that was written by some third-level engineer, but gave us the actual blueprints that were used to make it, which means, of course, that the Torah and reality fit each other perfectly.
All right, so the 7% of self-confidence I had of any kind of intellect has just gone out the window. My brain has melted and is running out of my ears. So, the Torah, when you say the Torah existed, and I know you're talking about ideas, but I mean, we looking at like the 5 books of Moses. I mean, is this because that would kind of like the book before the movie?
Exactly, but it's more than that. So I'm trying to decide how deep we want to go down the rabbit hole, because it's a really important concept, but it's also one that can be very unsettling to many people if they're not prepared to understand it in enough depth. If people only get a hold of the surface of it, then it can be either very off-putting, in the sense that they think, well, wait a minute, you can't have the book before the world was made. Well, God looked in the book and saw all the stuff that was going to happen with Adam and Chava, Adam and Eve, and then he did it anyway, right? If God knew all the bad stuff that people were going to make, why didn't he design it differently to do it different, right? So there's that whole, counter argument, which is missing the point. When the sages say that God looked into the Torah to create the world, it wasn't that God felt bound by the Torah to make the world with all of the, in quote, imperfections that were there. It means that the wisdom that created the world is based entirely on the same wisdom which was used to create the Torah. So there's no separation between the two in terms of the field they cover. If you get out your Venn diagram and you talk about the wisdom of the Torah and the wisdom needed to make the world, they overlap perfectly. Now, both of those, of course, are subcategories of God's ultimate wisdom, which is infinite and goes beyond their boundaries, but they both overlap perfectly. Go ahead.
Okay, so there's a family link between. I'm trying to put it into. I think I get what you're saying. There's a link between the two items. It's like science, right? You can have biological science, and then you might have physics. And while the two look kind of different, and one would be more ethereal, and one would be more grounded in earth and in real things, they both live within the realm of nature, and they both can be used to explain each other while they're not the same thing. They're not two separate entities.
Good analogy, which inspires another one in me just now. It's like electricity and magnetism.
Right.
They look like they're completely separate. But you can generate magnetism with electricity, and you can generate electricity with magnetism. And so too, and this is indeed one of the commentaries on this particular verse, the idea that the earth being founded by wisdom is saying that the world, the reality, was created by Chokhmah, but saying that the heavens were founded with this understanding is often referred to as like the natural laws of the world. So there is the Torah way of understanding the world, and there is the natural law way of understanding the world, and they're linked. Now, the problem is the natural law way of understanding the world doesn't come with an answer key. It's incredibly hard and time consuming, and it doesn't come with a moral compass built in, at least not one that we've been able to discover so far. So that's why we're very grateful that God gave us the revelation of Torah, because even though in a hypothetical sense, this world, since it is based on the same original knowledge of God, would be identical if it was pursued in either path, it's simply hard to do it through the natural world. It is much easier to use the cheat sheet of the Torah, the Cliff Notes, the Spark Notes, or whatever else people use to cheat around the world.
All right, I think I get where you're going with that. But that second part of that line, he established the heavens by understanding. Because heaven is such an ambiguous term. To some people, it means where you go when you die, and to some people, it means just another dimension, and some people, it means literal clouds. You're just going to say yes.
Right? The idea of the heavens being, created is perfectly fine as, a transcendental form of existence. But the idea of the heavens here referring to the skies, the actual meteorological atmosphere thing, is also perfectly in keeping with the understanding of this verse. It's almost as though some words can have multiple layers of meaning, and all of them add to our understanding.
That's very helpful.
Well, it is, because otherwise you end up arguing about, what is the true meaning, and by doing so, you close yourself off to the alternative meaning, which is equally true and helpful.
Right.
One of the things you begin to see when you study the collections of rabbinic texts, in particular the Midrashim, but it's found in numerous other texts as well, is there is almost always going to be an additional explanation of the same verse that you began talking about. And in the Midrash, it's famously introduced by saying Devar Acher. And there's another thing. It's like, well, wait a minute. I thought you just told me what this meant. How can you tell me what it also means if you just told me what it meant. And that is one of the limitations that we have really picked up, unfortunately, in the modern world, erroneously from our scientific progress, which is amazing and wonderful, is we've come to the conclusion that each thing can only mean one thing, and that we're done. And that's simply not the way the world works. And it's also not the way that understanding any text has ever worked throughout history.
So this next line definitely, if we've just mentioned the creation of the world, the next time definitely kind of put me in mind of the flood. By his knowledge, the depths burst open, and the skies distilled dew. And it definitely felt... it definitely feels like it's talking about... I have to say, actually, earlier this week, I was talking with somebody. They were a flat earther. They believed the earth is flat. And their belief that the earth is flat is based solely on the fact... Well, I think there's probably two things going on. One, they don't trust the government, and therefore nothing they say can be true. And secondly, they believe everything that they read in the Bible. And in the beginning, it says that the heavens were placed above the earth. So their argument would be if the heavens are above the earth, and if it was a globe, then the heavens were all around the earth. So they didn't. Their understanding was that Earth must be flat for there to be a heaven above it.
They do understand that up is a relational.
Yeah, I'm not
direction.
Yeah, I think that,
and that if we're talking about the skies are indeed above the dirt wherever you happen to be standing.
Yeah, I think you'd need to have that written in the Bible for them to to listen. But
that's unfortunate.
Yeah, I mean, I can picture it, and there's actually there's kind of evidence that there were huge, vast caverns filled with water, and as the earth cooled, it shrunk, and then this water came out, and it's conceivable scientifically that that's kind of how it works. But anyway, that's what I kind of read when I read this line. By his knowledge, the depths burst apart, and the skies distilled dew. It seems like it's talking about the first rain.
Right. So it's definitely talking about how we have this unusual system, which is unusual if you think about it, which is that God created this world in a cycle that allows water to come up and down. And between the two of them, humans get to actually exist. And there's never too much from the top that destroys all of us. There's never too much from the bottom which destroys all of us. The only time that ever happened is, of course, in the story of Noah. So the idea that we're constantly under threat by water above and water below is sort of baked into the cosmology here. But, of course, God allows it to come out at just the right amount and to come down at just the right amount. It doesn't mean there can't be the occasional flood, having just had a hurricane brush our coast. I'm very aware of the danger that the rain can bring. But as a species, we've not been threatened by having too much water from up or down.
My son, do not lose sight of them. Hold on to resourcefulness and foresight. So the them there is resourcefulness and foresight.
I personally would read that as that pronoun is going back to the antecedent now, rather than the ones that come later.
All right.
Which is we're going back to this understanding and wisdom.
Okay.
The verse 19, right? That God used wisdom and understanding to make the world, right? His knowledge is used to do the depths, right? So now we have three different versions of thinking nouns, right? Wisdom, understanding, and knowledge. And then the verse 21 is saying, so keep wisdom, understanding, and knowledge as part of your life.
Oh, very good. Okay. Okay. So this kind of like water, ice, and steam. I mean, it feels then that if we're talking about depths, I mean, an ocean is a very different thing to rain. So I suppose you could argue that knowledge and wisdom are two different forms of the same thing. Well, then I could be rambling. I'm trying to ignore the cat. I can hear her complaining in the hall.
Cats are hard to ignore, but certainly they are three different resources of that we are meant to keep our storehouse of. We're not supposed to let them go away, and that whether or not wisdom and understanding and knowledge are identical, they're not. Usually, they're not treated as synonyms, but just as they're not technically treated as synonyms in English. They are things that we need to keep focused on. And of course, if you're reading the book of Proverbs, you've already made a commitment to try and understand things, to try and gain wisdom, and to try and have more knowledge. So you're in a good place if you're already reading this book.
Right, I'm just going to let her in, because there will be no peace. She's just past a year old, and she's very small. She didn't grow into a huge cat, but for every 1 part cat, it's 15 parts demon, isn't it? You're a little demon. Right. No. Okay, thank you very much. She's all lovely and lovely for the first 5 minutes. She comes into the room, and then the horror starts with scratching. Okay. They will give you life to your spirit and grace to your throat. That's an interesting way of saying it. It's talking about speech, right? Grace to your throat.
Well, that would be an interpretation.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily obviously what it's supposed to be, but it's, I believe, really more meant to be a reflection of adornment, right? That this is going to be how you will be adorned, right? People would, of course, always want to have something flashy. They don't want to have the bling, as kids used to say. Maybe they still say. I don't know. I'm kind of out of touch.
Yeah, me too.
But they used to use the term bling. Those whippersnappers. And the idea that this is not only good for your soul, but this is truly what will win you acclaim and honor as a more reasonable and worthwhile way of winning acclaim and honor.
Okay. Oh, I wouldn't have looked at it that way. That's very interesting. Kind of like the mayor of the town gets to wear the big gold chain.
Yes, definitely in the UK and the Isles. Yeah.
All right.
Our mayors don't do that so much here in the States.
No, they have to do proper work in the States. Here, the mayor doesn't have to pick sheriffs and things like that. That's done differently.
And the idea here is, of course, that the word chen is which is usually translated as grace. Doesn't mean grace in the Christological sense that it was, turned into. Here, it means that you find favor, right? That this is something that will be pleasing to you and others.
Oh, okay.
Right? We use the phrase all the time. May you find grace in the eyes of God and others, meaning you will be thought well of.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, I'd never have got there on my own. That's why I love doing these programs. Okay. Then you will go your way safely and not injure your feet. Now, I assume in that instance, because there's that one, that kind of picture in the Psalms of Torah will guide your footsteps, as a lamp to your feet. Is this a similar kind of notion?
Absolutely, and it's worth pointing out that in general, when we talk about your feet stumbling, that it is a symbol for an error of behavior. So, for example, when we have in the Torah the prohibition on putting a stumbling block before the blind,
right?
Of course, that means don't trip blind people. But it is also understood to mean don't give wrong guidance to a person that will lead them to commit a transgression. Okay. And so when we talk about wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, keeping your feet from stumbling, it doesn't just mean I won't trip while walking to the store. It also means I will keep myself away from error and transgression.
All right, brilliant. Okay. When you lie down, you will be unafraid. You will lie down and your sleep will be sweet. So this is interesting for me, because if I was, I don't know, it's 3,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, and I'm living day by day, herding, I don't know, a flock of goats, and I have a kind of a small tent, and there are lions. I'm not sure how my intelligent attitude towards life will cause me to not worry about the lions.
So it's not a question of not worrying about the lions.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same way that a person can go to sleep in the modern world and not be in constant panic about, assault or robbery.
Okay.
Because they have either secured their own home the way it needs to be secured, which takes a little bit of understanding and wisdom. And even more likely, if you're truly going to sleep at peace, it doesn't mean you've just put more bars on the window. It means that you've actually involved yourself in creating a society where burglary and assault is not common.
Right. I see. So yeah, so it's much more about because we spoke about this in, I think, in the first program when we're talking kind of about mercy and about shared positive morals, and that's what this is about. This is kind of about educating yourself and others into being better people.
Right.
The trickle down effect would be an environment where you didn't necessarily. You could remove a lot of things which other people maybe can't remove. I mean, because it's different. If you even today, there are some areas of the world you wouldn't want to walk down the street on your own at 3 o'clock in the morning, and some areas of the world where it would be perfectly okay to walk down the street at 3 o'clock in the morning, and a lot of that is down to the society or the needs or issues of the people in that country and the way it's run.
Correct.
Yep. Okay. I am rambling a lot today. Apologies to you at home.
That's not rambling. That's called understanding.
Okay. It's unlike me. Okay. When you lie down, you'll be unafraid. You will lie down and your sleep will be sweet. You will not fear sudden terror or the disaster that comes upon the wicked. For the Lord will be your trust, and he will keep your feet from being caught. So this, I think, leads to a bigger question, or the disaster that comes from being wicked. There are texts which talk about the sun shining on the good and the wicked, and the rain falling on the good and the wicked. And often, within teaching the Bible, we'll hear that sometimes bad things happen to good people, and good things happen to bad people. So when I read here, you will not fear this sudden terror or the disaster that comes upon the wicked. Are we to read that in the same context as the previous line? That wicked people are wicked to each other, and so you don't have to worry about those kind of events happening? Or is it something more to do with kind of sinful behavior, bad behavior?
No. I think you got the right idea there. That it's saying that wicked people will eventually suffer, but when it begins to happen, you will not be caught up in that the same way. And yes, in the same time, day to day, the sun rises on the wicked and the good, every day. Day to day, the wicked and the righteous will both have hunger if there is a famine. But when it comes time for the actual reconciliation of those who are evil and those who are not, you will not have to worry.
Okay.
So it's not saying that every day, you'll be perfectly spared, even if there are bombs dropping all around you.
It just, that's kind of stuff you need to iron out, because if a person, especially if they come into the Bible kind of new, there's an inherency to sometimes read it and take it at first glance, and if you were to take some of those lines at first glance, it would seem there's a promise there of insurance against fire and theft, as long as you are using your common sense.
Trying to understand anything and thinking you've got it at first glance is the exact opposite of the entire book of Proverbs.
Right.
Here's a multi-chapter work on how to understand, how to use tools to understand life. And you think that you can understand those tools without having to apply yourself, then you're in trouble.
But I'm the guy that gets the thing come from IKEA and take out all the bits and line them all out on the floor, and then there's 15 pages of instructions. But I just see the Allen key, and I'm like, fine, I'm just going to go ahead.
This seems to fit here.
Yeah, so we'll make it happen. And actually, about 2 months ago, we got 2 sets of drawers, and the first one went together. I mean, it took ages, but I got it done. And the second one, so confident was I. The second one, I didn't bother looking at any of the paperwork, and I got quite close to the end before I realized that one internal part was upside down. And because of the way they're built onto what you've already done. You can't just, I couldn't just reach in and take it out. And I had to take the whole thing back to nothing, and it was a pain.
It was a self-induced ordeal.
It was, yeah, and it was all because I was so gung-ho, and I've done this, I'm a professional. But no, the professionals read the pamphlet. Do not withhold good from one who deserves it. When you have no power, do it. Oh, somewhere? Sorry.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, no. Do not withhold good from one who deserves it when you have the power to do it, and then in brackets, for him.
Okay, that's much better.
Okay.
The first time you read it through, that didn't sound right. I have a slightly different translation, so go ahead and do verse 28, because it's the same. It continues the same theme.
Do not say to your fellow, "Come back again. I'll give it to you tomorrow," when you have it with you. Oh, so it's procrastination of good and charity.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean, it's not just a question of charity, though. Of course, if someone comes to your door and says, I'm starving, I need food. If you've got food, give them food. Right? Don't say, come back tomorrow and I'll give you food. I mean, that's a very basic level, but there's also the more common level where we're not usually confronted by people in such dire straits, where someone just says, hey, can I borrow your hedge trimmer? Why would you not? Right? I mean, this is your neighbor. Why would you keep it from this person, or push them off, or say come back later, or just if you have the ability to do something that is good and useful to other people, and it is important that we have here the idea that a person is deserving of being good. This isn't like someone showing up with a pistol saying, can I borrow your hedge trimmer? But this is just a regular person. It doesn't have to be like the most righteous person in the world, but just a regular guy. Help them. If you've got the ability to help, and don't do it later, do it now. Which goes back into the whole idea of this is one. It's sorry. I'm just geeking out about this, but because I love the way that the Tanakh will often subvert expectations. Right? You'll be going along, and if you're thinking about it, because it's always worth trying to anticipate what's coming next, just so you can see when the Tanakh goes, oh no, it isn't. And in this case, we've had this long buildup from verse 18 or verse 19, where we picked up today. But really, it's been going for some time, about God using wisdom and understanding and knowledge, and heavens above, the waters below. It's your adornment. You will never stumble. You will never be afraid. Help your neighbor. It's like, what? That's your big advice? Help my neighbor? I thought you were going to give me the secret of, immortality. I thought you were going to give me the ultimate wisdom of how to succeed in the stock market. It looked like he was building up to this big reveal. And the big reveal is, if someone needs it and you can help them with it, do it. But that is the big reveal.
It's like it's a domino effect, isn't it? If no one takes that first step, then no one is going to do any good. And you're not going to benefit from it, and no one's going to benefit from it, and everyone ends up standing up on their own.
Exactly. It's just, it looks like it is such an inconsequential and almost trivial or simple thing, or even something that was, well, obviously you'd help a person, and yet people don't. And the greatest form of wisdom is when you give someone the conventional wisdom that they're not doing. Like, well, everyone knows that you should help your neighbor. It's like, then why does no one do it?
Mm.
Because trust me, the only time that you see neighbors around here is, when we roll out with the chainsaw cutting up a tree that fell out.
Mm.
But you don't see people helping each other on a regular basis. And it's a major problem now, and apparently it was a major problem more than 2,000 years ago as well.
Right.
And if you want to know how to create a good, safe, and comfortable life, get to know your neighbors. Help them when they need it.
Mm. Very good. Okay.
We're going to get more advice like that throughout the rest of the chapter here.
Do not devise harm against your fellow who lives trustfully with you. So they do these little caveats. I mean, in verse 27 there it says, do not withhold good from one who deserves it. And this one is, do not devise harm against a fellow who lives trustfully with you. So it's not saying, because I mean that would imply that in kind of forms of punishments, if someone did deserve it, that's a different.
Not exactly. So read your translation again.
Do not devise harm against your fellow who lives trustfully with you.
All right. So I would put maybe a little comma there, saying because he lives trustfully with you.
Oh, okay.
Right. That it's not just that you don't harm him because you trust each other.
Mm.
It's you don't harm him because he doesn't expect it.
Mm.
I mean, it's one thing to have to plan a retaliation against the enemy who's been raiding across your border, but if your neighbor is perfectly at peace with you and you're at peace with him, well, if you attack him, it is the ultimate betrayal.
Mm.
So really, what this is talking about is don't betray someone who trusts you.
Okay. Do not quarrel with a man for no cause when he has done you no harm. I mean, these kind of feel like common sense, but I've had mornings where I've woken up and sat down and like flicked my phone open, gone to Facebook, and I've been in kind of a grumpy mood. So I might want to poke somebody with a, and that it kind of feels like that. They didn't wake up and think, oh, I know what I'm going to do today. I'm going to get Jason annoyed. They had nothing. My name never passed their imagining. But I mean, so it sounds kind of like who would do that? But I mean, it happens all the time. If you're in a bad mood or your day isn't going well, it can be quite normal human nature to take it out on somebody who doesn't deserve it.
It is absolutely human nature. As they say, the oppressed kick downwards.
Mm.
Anytime people are under stress or under some sort of suffering condition, they are likely to attack someone who isn't them. Plus, and this is where it is why it needs to be wisdom literature, because it's not common sense. Imagine you live in a society where you don't have a firm set of laws. You don't have a firm set of protection with police, with a honest and upright judges. Then you know who the best person to pick on is? The guy who doesn't expect it.
Mm.
Right? It's absolutely good advice to rob from the weak.
Mm.
It's absolutely good advice to sneak into your neighbor's house when he's not watching and steal stuff because he'll never suspect you.
Mm.
That is actually how you get ahead in the world if you are in that kind of Machiavellian mode. And this is telling the people of 2,500, well, a little bit more years ago, no, that may look clever. Of hey, he suspects nothing. This is the perfect crime. It may look like you're being smart, but you're not.
Do not envy a lawless man or choose any of his ways.
Which is the continuation I was waiting for, because what we've just described is, you probably think, but the evil guy would do it, and he'd get something. He'd steal that sheep. If I were a bad person, I would just take this.
Mm.
And we feel kind of almost regretful that we're not bad. I've heard people say, if I wasn't a nice guy, I would.
Right.
Ba, 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 ba.
Mm.
And welcome to humanity for the last 3,000 years. We regret being nice because it looks like the bad people get more than us.
For the devious man is an abomination to the Lord, but he is intimate with the straightforward. That's an interesting term. Now, because there's a capital H there, that would confuse me. And actually, I am just trying to see if there's... I mean, when it says he, that's talking about God, right? He's intimate with the... Like, I don't know if straightforward is a very good way of doing it too. I suppose in English it would say that for the devious man is an abomination to the Lord, but he, the Lord, is close to the honest person, maybe.
Yes. The word that's actually being used here is his secret. Is with the upright, with the straight people. The people who are yashar. Trying to think of the good English word for that.
Yeah, I think
the people who go in a straight path.
Yeah.
Right. Those who walk a straight path. Right. So God is saying that if you walk a straight path, you will understand God's secrets, and the people who walk the crooked path will not. Right? They are not going to reach that level of understanding, and it is. There is a poetry here that is being lost in the English because the word that's being used for the devious person is the person who is crooked, who is going in the wrong direction.
Oh, okay.
So it's a beautiful parallel in the poetry of Hebrew of saying, literally, you might translate it as being the one who walks crookedly is an abomination to God. The straight one are with his have his secrets. Very
good. You should do your own translation of the book of Proverbs. When we've done all this, we'll go back through them.
Well, that would be, trying to capture the poetry of the Hebrew in English is so hard. It's one of the reasons I give a lot of credit to Everett Fox,
right?
The translation of the Torah that really tried to capture the poetry. I mean, it's still not perfect because no translation is, but at least you can get a feel that there's much more literary style and poetry going on there than just thou shalt and thou shalt not. The Hebrew is not that bland.
I had a conversation a little while ago about that with somebody, and I said, he quoted something to me, and I said, well, you're reading the English, and they were like, yeah, so. I'm like, well, you're not reading, like, you don't there's idiom, and there's poetry, and there's allegory, and there's kind of pictures, and what about like when it says God has long nostrils, and he said, "How dare you blaspheme about the Most High?" And I didn't. I said, "That's what you're the one that's reading what isn't in the book." That's just don't assume that just because you've read it in the King James that's actually what it says. I mean, but no, it'd be interesting to get kind of someone to go through some of these chapters and put them into 2019 speak.
While still capturing the poetry,
right? Yeah.
Like I said, that's a full-time job.
Yeah, it would be. So Everett Fox, I think wasn't he attempting to do the whole of?
He is working on doing more of the Tanakh, but I can't quite remember how far he's gotten. I think he may have done Joshua and Judges. Wow. Maybe I thought I heard him, or maybe that's what he was working on next. I can't quite remember. I do know that Alter came out with a full translation of the Tanakh.
Wow.
And he is not quite as interested in capturing the poetic syntax as Fox, but he is very good at capturing some of the literature, and he has very good footnotes.
All right, okay. The curse of the Lord is on the house of the wicked, but he blesses the abode of the righteous. So if it feels that is kind of speaks for itself, but I fell into this trap before. When it says curse, I mean, are we talking about a physical curse, like a gypsy curse?
So I mean, it's not like curse in that sense is just too cartoonish,
right? Because this is exactly what we were just talking about. You get a word which is really strongly associated to one thing, But I can see how there's the idea of what a curse is, and how you might say that a person who has a wicked life, he opens himself up to more misfortunes, and you might end up looking at that person's life and saying, no, he must have been cursed. But you don't necessarily mean he was cursed. It's just he appears to be cursed.
Right, but it's more like the idea of, no good will come of it.
Mm.
The idea that it's, just, it may look like they are being blessed because, the wicked are prospering by their wickedness, but in fact, whatever they may have is actually going to come back to be a problem for them.
Mm. But he blesses the abode of the righteous. At scoffers he scoffs, which is not easy when you've got a little bit of a lisp. At scoffers he scoffs, and to the lowly he shows grace. The wise shall obtain honor, but dullards... Now there's a word that isn't used enough. I don't know if you can say that today. But dullards get disgrace as their portion. Oh, I see. But dullards get disgrace as their portion. So a scoffers he scoffs. Now that kind of what's that famous phrase? Something about men make their plans and God laughs.
That's the phrase,
right? But to the lowly he shows grace. Now, so lowly, I'm assuming it's scoff. When they say scoffers, they're talking about people that are kind of arrogant, self-confident,
exactly
right? And lowly would be something along the lines of humble.
Exactly right.
Okay.
And again, we have this word chen that we had before with the idea of your neck being adorned with this grace. And here we have it again, that God is showing favor to the lowly, those that are not arrogant and kind of attitude, and likewise those that are wise are inheriting honor, which is of course what the wicked are all after, and those that are fools, they end up with a problem.
Okay, awesome. That's like the Book of Esther right there. Excellent. All right, so that was chapter 3. Next time we shall start on 4. I hope you're enjoying it at home. If you've got questions about the up and coming chapters or comments or things you want us to talk about, let us know in the comments section, or you can approach us on Facebook. Thank you very much for giving us your time today, Rabbi.
Well, thank you, Jason, for pulling it all together and your insightful questions and comments. I'm serious. Right? You always ask very good questions, and your reflections add an awful lot to our understanding.
I'm not great at taking compliments, but thank you very much.
And you can work on that.
Yeah, I'll try. And thank you at home for supporting the channel and watching our videos and giving those thumbs up. If you are watching these and you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It helps the channel a lot. Don't forget to head over to Rabbi Neely's channel. There's going to be a link on the video. I really can't express how many different types of video over there. There's a really great series that's ongoing, parts of Judaism, and he does a really great one on Torah portion and all sorts of stuff. So check that out, and we will see you all again very soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.